Let's go.
Like the sound of stuff. Yeah.
And we smoked it all again.
This is Taylor Berryman, and you are listening to the Poptimist podcast. And today on the podcast, we have bass player Joe Birmingham. How are you doing today, Joe?
Doing good. A little tired, but good.
Were you gigging last night?
Yeah, I played late.
Where were you playing at?
I was downtown Nashville, playing at Legends Corner.
Legends Corner. And is that like a steady gig for you? Are you playing that every single week?
That's my regular Tuesday night, pretty much every week.
And how many nights a week are you gigging?
Right now, about 5 on a slow week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what do you think has contributed to the fact that you're gigging so much? Like, what are some things that you've done music-wise, or like professional-wise, that have set you apart to where you've been able to get so many gigs?
I think the thing that separates me from a lot of people is just work ethic is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of cats who are great players, but they don't want to work on tunes at home. They just will kind of wing it, and
they fake it.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there's times where I have to do that, but I try to be on point and learn the material that is kind of the standard to what gets called on these gigs, and know it inside and out, and know the bass parts, and know the kick drum patterns, and know everything I need to know, so that when I play, it's going to sound like the artist playing it.
Yeah. So, how many songs do you know right now of all these country tunes?
I don't know. I used to have an idea because I had a list. Now it's just I just play, and I'm always adding more songs. I don't really keep track, but there's a lot in my head right now, and I still have a lot to learn. But I mean, that's the whole point of being a musician. You're never gonna know everything. You're never gonna, there's always something more to learn. Or you're never gonna know enough. Basically, I think. And
you grew up in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, just south of Philadelphia.
So did you have like a music teacher who instilled that in you when you were growing up?
Yeah, I took private lessons. I started off on guitar at age 12 with this guy named Rick Giordano, and he was a local jazz guitar player, and he was the guy. Like when Nat King Cole would come to town, if he didn't have a guitar player, they would call him. Like he got called by a lot of these jazz artists, and like especially the singers liked working with him, because if they just wanted to do a small kind of show where it was just an accompanist and them, he was able to not only accompany them, but when he went to solo, could solo, play chord changes at the same time, do a lot of different stuff like that. So he was very versatile. And then I started taking bass lessons through him as well. And then it all snowballed until I went to college.
So how'd you get started on bass? What made the jump happen?
I was playing guitar, and when I graduated middle school, my parents asked me what I wanted as a graduation gift, and I figured, well, why not just get a bass just to have and tinker around with. I always thought I was going to be a guitar player. I never thought, oh yeah, I want to be
No one thinks they're going to be a bass player.
Yeah. and I hate to be that typical guy, but it is what it is, and they got me a little, Squire PJ, had Mile High action on it, and it was good for the time, and that's pretty much how I got started. I was like, I just want a bass, so I can start just having another thing under my belt, and they were like, all right, sure. So,
was it an Indonesian PJ? Was it one of those?
So, yeah.
That was one of my first basses,
it was like
too.
An early 2000s Squire, so
just
probably
shitty, horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Like, I mean, they sounded okay.
Yeah,
for what they were, but you couldn't adjust the action on the neck because it didn't really. It was
the truss rod had no give.
Yeah, so it was just like boom. It went all the way to the other side whenever you would try and do it.
Yeah, in the summertime when it would get humid out, it would just warp.
Oh,
and you could see the giant curve in it, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, this is all I got, so.
Well, it makes your hands super strong. I think
Well, yeah.
learning on a shitty instrument is so integral because when you have an actual good one,
Oh, yeah.
then you're like, wow, this is an actual good instrument. I know
Oh, for
I can
sure, yeah.
feel that the neck feels good, which I think is probably the most crucial part.
Oh, yeah, for me, that's the first thing I look at anytime I pick up a bass. I don't care what the body weight is. The first things I always look at are how does the neck feel, and if I strap it on, is it gonna neck dive? Is it balanced?
Mm-hmm.
Those are my big, things for sure.
Have you ever played any of those? I've only played the Epiphone Thunderbirds, but have you ever played any of those Thunderbird basses?
I haven't. I've tinkered around. The guy who builds the basses I use now has a Thunderbird styled model, and I've tinkered around with his at the shop, but I've never taken one out on a gig.
Yeah.
But also the one I was playing at his shop, it was an 8-string.
An 8-string Thunderbird model.
Yeah, so it was like the.
It's like John Paul Jones.
Yeah, like you had to hold down 2 strings at once, and it was cool. It had a weird sound, and I mean it was fun. But I definitely would not invest in that bass just because the practicality. Like maybe like down the line, if I had extra money laying around and was like, I want to just do a musical project and it's going to be weird.
I feel like it's probably a gigging nightmare for a bass.
Oh, for sure. But
it's a lot to maintain live on stage.
And I asked him about it. He's like, I specifically built that for NAMM just to show that if this is something you want, I can do it.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why I did it. And which I actually think somebody bought it from him recently, like this prog rock bass.
Of course.
Yeah, like that's where it would fit, but like the strings are close, so you got to use a pick. But it was a cool bass, like, and it played great. Like I might eventually get one of his just regular Thunderbirds, but the 8-string was a little much.
I like those Thunderbird basses, but they always have like with the Epiphone that I played has such bad neck dive. As soon as you hold it in your hands, it's just like straight down to the floor.
Yeah, you got to wear like a leather strap or something that'll like kind of grip to your shirt.
Yeah. They're cool basses. Have you played many Gibson basses before?
I really haven't. I dabbled, in the music stores with like I forget what it's really called, but I call it the SG bass.
Yeah, like the short scale.
Yeah. Because I'm a huge Jack Bruce fan. I was like, oh, well, he played this. Let me try it. I'm like, this is I'm 6'4" and I'm built like a linebacker. This doesn't work for me.
Those kind of basses fit me a little bit better.
Yeah.
They're really cool. I think those kind of the Gibson basses, they sound really good with flat wounds. Like there's one that I like. Like one of my dream basses, I guess you could say, would be the Gibson Ripper. Have you ever seen those? Those are cool.
Yeah, I like the old school stuff like that. Like I've played a couple of Rippers at music stores and Grabbers. They're the Grabber I think is a really cool kind of instrument. It's just I think just
you can slide that pickup right
on that novelty that it's like I can literally just adjust my tone.
It's very 70s. Idea in itself, but it's they seem cool.
Yeah. I like the body style on them too. If I was gonna get one, I'll definitely probably get a Ripper over a Grabber, but they're definitely interesting basses, and I like the Ripper too because of the early Brothers Johnson stuff. That's what Louis Johnson was playing before he made the switch to Music Man, and it's like, they kind of have a slightly jazz tone, but they're kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like they like I know Mike Hindert from Green Day before he made the switch to Fender. That's what he was playing. Like that bass line on Longview.
Yeah.
I think he's playing one of those, and it just has this it's like this weird in between P bass and a J bass tone. It's like the high end of a J bass and that punch, but like the low end of the balls of the P bass.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's definitely a versatile instrument, obviously, because like you said, Green Day used it, Brothers Johnson, 2 completely different, musically different genres and eras even, and it just is. It definitely is a functional instrument. But for me, I know I'm more of a Fender guy. Like I don't play Fenders that much anymore. But the basses I play are slightly Fender designed. So
I prefer Fenders, as you can tell. I have that bass right there. That we're talking about my '65 jazz bass, which I like it. but I don't really want to gig with it. I don't want to bring it out of the house. Like, that's why I got that bass right there. Plus, I feel like for playing a long time, that P bass is just way better.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like like I like jazz bass necks because they're so quick. But if I'm gonna be playing like bass lines, and I kind of want a little bit of a bigger neck to kind of run around on.
Yeah, no, I totally understand.
I used to own a Mustang bass. It was like a what was it? It was a Squire Mikey Way Mustang bass. Mikey Way was a bass player from My Chemical Romance.
Oh, okay.
But it was weird. It had this humbucker pickup on it. I think it was like single coil. I don't know what the design was or anything like that, but the bass, it looked like something that Ace Frehley would have played. It was like
really?
gold, or not gold, silver sparkle.
Huh.
But I was listening back to all the demos that I've recorded over the past 4 or 5 years, and I realized for all of them, I have been playing that Mustang bass on them. I didn't play that J bass on one demo that I've done. It's just because they sing and they're so playful.
Yeah.
So I really want to. I sold that whenever I moved down from Maine, but I want to get a Mustang bass badly. I think I have my eye on one of those Japanese ones next.
Yeah, I haven't tried too many of them out yet. I want to dig in a little bit and check them out. I'm really curious actually to check out when it comes out the Flea custom jazz.
I just saw that in shell pink, right?
Yeah. And I think it looks really cool, and obviously I think
the stack knobs.
Yeah, I think they're doing it because he, on the last few records, I know on Stadium Arcadium, he said he got really into these vintage jazz basses and bought like 15 of them.
Yeah.
And he said it was the first time that he really kind of paid attention to tone woods. He's like, I never really. He's like, I didn't focus on it. I just figured it'd be the amp that would give you the tone, and I just kind of got into it this year and realized, wow, these are instruments that so long haven't been a tree for so long that they know they're an instrument now and not a tree.
Yeah.
And
that's funny.
And which I'm paraphrasing, of course. Some article in Bass Player. But I think obviously for the world tours and stuff, he wants something that'll be close tone-wise, but that if it gets damaged or whatever...
he won't be $20,000 out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
But they look cool, and, I mean, the Fender Custom Shop stuff usually is pretty on point.
Yeah.
It's badass, so...
For sure. I actually met... I met those builders. I used to work at this place called Wildwood Guitars out in Colorado. Mm. And the master builder, John Cruz, he came out. I think he mainly works on Strats and stuff like that. I don't know if he works on any of the bass stuff. Yeah. But those guys are pretty cool. It was cool to just kind of talk to them and hear about the shop and all that good stuff. Like at Wildwood, they had like a bunch of. They're like, I think, the number one online dealer for like Fender, Gibson, all the custom shop shit. So the reps were pretty there frequently, but I got to play some crazy fucking guitars while I worked there.
Oh, I bet.
And like the owner Steve, he has like a pretty cool vintage collection, so he would always be bringing stuff in and out, and just some of the stuff that he had is just like, holy shit, like I get it. And being a bass player, is like I can appreciate it, but he didn't really have much bass stuff, but it really made me become a little bit of a guitar snob.
Yeah, for sure.
And kind of understand the difference between all the tones, the woods. Before things were illegal and you could just chop down any tree that you wanted and it sounded great.
Yeah, I mean, those old, especially like those old Fender basses with like Brazilian rosewood necks. Like I've got a Warmoth neck on a Mexi Jazz that I've swapped out, and when I ordered it, I was like, oh yeah, Brazilian rosewood, that'd be great. And the guy at Warmoth calls me, he's like, hey man, I just want you to know, like, you're getting the last piece of Brazilian rosewood I have. I was like, do what? Like, because I didn't know what was going on. He's like, there's been a 40-year ban on it because the trees are endangered. So we have to switch back to Indian rosewood and kind of search out other possibilities. He's like, but I just cut your neck from my last pallet of Brazilian rosewood. He's like, I made you a neck and a guitar player neck. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. And then I found out after the fact that I ordered it that I can't take it out of the country or it'll be confiscated.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of countries, if you travel outside the borders with it. Even if you have the bill of sale proving that you bought it before the ban, there's a chance that they might confiscate it.
How would they know that?
I don't know. But it happened to a buddy of mine. They temporarily, I think he flew to England, and they put a hold on his 68 jazz bass. And it sat there for 3 weeks.
Holy shit.
In security at Heathrow, and he's back here in the States, like, gigging, like, and he's like, look, guys, that's, like, my main bass.
Yeah.
The serial number said, you know, like, and he sent all the information to them, and eventually he got it back, you know, and they're like, hey, we're sorry about the mix-up, like, definitely carry that documentation with you, though, if you travel with it again.
So what documentation would you have to have for something like that?
Well, I know for me, I would just need the bill of sale from Warmouth to prove that, you know, like, 8 years ago I put this neck on, and that it was, because it was, literally I had ordered it, and then 3 weeks later that ban happened.
Well, that whole thing with Gibson happened, too, where the shop got raided.
Yeah.
Which was a couple of years ago, I think.
I remember that very well, because I had a buddy, a friend of mine from college, her, I think now husband, he worked for Gibson at the time, and was a guitar builder there, and yeah, he's like, yeah, one day, you know, I'm just bolting bridges on, because that was my job at the time, just, you know, comes down the line, and okay, I'm bolting this bridge on, and then the FBI comes in.
Did they come in like guns a-blazing? Like,
I don't know, but he said it was like FBI SWAT, like they came in.
That's so fucked up.
Everybody was like, whoa, we're like, and he's like, most of the guys there, like, some of them got, he's like, I think some of them got a little paranoid because, you know, they're all old hippies. So they probably might have had, like, some weed or something on them.
Yeah.
He's like, but we're just like, we're guitar builders, man. Like,
yeah.
We're not.
See, that kind of shit just pisses me off so bad because it's like, there are so many other things that the government could be doing besides persecuting people who, like, it was over the fucking wood, too. It was like, okay, I understand. You couldn't have, like, a meeting with them, like, send someone out and say, hey, by the way, if you don't listen to us, then we're going to have the SWAT team come.
And everybody thinks that Gibson was in the wrong, and they really weren't. The issue basically was just paperwork. Because they were using, I think it was Indian rosewood. Anytime they had to use rosewood, and, you know, which is common. You know, Fender uses it, everybody uses Indian rosewood. But I think Indian law, like, cannot export something unless it's like a completed product. I can't remember. The guy, he explained it to me.
I remember hearing about this,
And he explained it.
It was like a checkbox pretty much on the paperwork.
Exactly. And, you know, because it was labeled as one thing and then shipped out, and it just was all just paperwork BS, you know, and that's all it came down to. It was just somebody messed up on the one end. And
you think that's just a phone call that they can make and be like, hey, by the way,
well, I think that's what ended up resolving it, was basically Gibson was like, look, here's our distributor for this wood, call them. And they did, and that's when it just all went away. I mean, but my buddy, he did get a paid 2-week vacation, though.
So they shut the shop down for 2 weeks?
Yeah, the shop was shut down for about 2 weeks, I think. It was a little bit of time. Like, you'd think it'd be something that would be resolved, like...
Well, it's the government, so something that should take a day would probably take 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know, and like, the day it happened, like, basically... The feds were like, step back from your stations, take, if you need your wallet, your keys, any personal items, but do not take any tools, do not take anything. Literally, like, he's like, we just all walked out.
That's so fucking stupid.
You know, he's like, we all walked out, and we didn't want to, like, go home because we didn't know if we'd be called back in, like, if it would get resolved that day. He's like, so we just, you know, he's like, me and a bunch of the guys just drove around, went to, like, Rock Block Guitars and, like, British Audio and Corner Music and, like, checked out all these, you know, little local guitar shops and stuff, and that's, you know, just what we did with the rest of our day.
What's your favorite guitar shop here in town?
I shop at Corner Music down on 12 South a lot. That's pretty much where I go if I need strings and most of my stuff. I shop there a lot, just primarily too. Well, one, because I like that it's been there forever. It's local.
How long have they been open for?
I think it's been like 40 or 50 years. They've been there a while.
Jesus,
they've been there a while.
That's
they're like a Nashville institution.
I've been there for a couple times, and I like that place a lot.
Yeah.
It has like an old school music store vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
The way it should, like a musician's store.
Yeah, and nobody, like, when I go in there, like, the check stuff, they'll ask me how I'm doing, but they won't it's not like the Guitar Center thing where they're breathing down your neck trying to make a sale.
Dude, fuck Guitar Center.
Yeah, because I mean, all the guys at Corner, the way that place works, they're all on salary, so they don't. The sales help them, I think.
Yeah.
But if they don't make a sale, they're still getting paid for that day.
Yeah.
So I love going down there, and JD over there, he's kind of like the bass guru at Corner. He's a great guy. Like every time I've gone in, I'll find a bass and plug in. I'll be like, okay, well, like when the new Fender Bassman amps came out, I was like, oh, I really want to try these, and they had the 410s and the heads, and I was like, all right, let's kick this on. And I'm playing, and the volume's not real loud because I want to be respectful.
You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Well, JD comes over and he's like, man, turn that shit up, and he cranks the volume way up, and he's like, look, he's like, here's my thoughts. He's like, if you're gonna try something out, and you want me to sell it to you, play it like you're gonna play it live. I was like, cool, all right.
So are you playing a Bassman now? Is that the kind of amp you're using?
No, I'm still I use Ampegs. I'm a big Ampeg guy.
Me too.
I've kind of been around the block, so to speak, with amps. Started off as Ampeg, and then was like, well, I need to find like that new cool sound, and then I went to Mark Bass, and they were great amps too. Like, and for what I was doing, they were really good because they had that bright kind of punch that could really cut over the mix. Which if you're playing in a 13-piece soul band is great. And then I got the Nashville, and it just tone-wise didn't really fit what I was doing. So I got rid of that and switched to Aguilar. Dug that. I love their stuff. I use their pickups pretty much in almost all my basses. I love their pickups, and I love their amps. They're great amps, but again, it just wasn't the tone I was looking for. And then I was thinking about going to GK, and a buddy of mine talked me out of that. And then I got to play on my buddy Sean Scruggs Rig, and he's a diehard Ampeg guy. He's an Ampeg artist, actually. I played on his rig, and it was just I think it was just their new 212. It's supposed to be linked up with this tube head. I forget the name of it, but it's based off of a tube head from the 70s. But it was just a 212 with a Portaflex 800, which is...
Dude, I have to say, Ampeg amps, man, they just sound... The tone, I would describe them as sweet. Yeah. Like, they sound a lot sweeter than other amps. They're deep and rich, but there's a sweetness there that other amps just don't possess.
Oh, for sure. I feel like they really get you that good mix of not too bassy, not too much mid range, not too much high end. It's I think
it's like a shaved tone.
Yeah, and like Jerry Jamot just said in an interview, he's like, I love Ampeg because it's fat but it's tight. Like,
yes, that's the perfect way to describe it. Yeah,
fat bottom, but it's tight.
It's punchy.
And it's not muddy sounding. And yeah, I love their amps, and I'm probably gonna keep using them until the day I die. And I mean, there's some other amps out there that I want to get that I think are cool.
Yeah. But as far as efficiency goes on stage and just playing live in a band.
Oh yeah, I mean whether I'm playing a passive bass or an active bass, all my Ampeg amps, I plug in. I don't mess with the ultra high or the ultra low at all. I leave that off, and I just flatline my EQs at 12 o'clock. My bass, mids, highs are all right at center, and it gives me a great tone.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of amp companies that I can do that. A lot of other amps you kind of have to mix your bass, and I don't like that. That takes too much time, especially if you're in a situation where you're running from gig to gig,
room to room,
Yeah.
Yeah, and every room sounds different.
Exactly.
So, are you playing backline at a lot of the gigs that you're playing, or do you have to have your own amp?
Pretty much all the gigs I'm doing now have backline.
That's nice.
Yeah. It's great not having to drag my gear out.
Then it can be anything. You don't care what the tone is then, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I still care about my tone. I try and achieve, quote unquote, my sound.
Sure.
And luckily, most of downtown Nashville is all backlined by GK.
Yeah.
So it's the same head in every room. The only difference is a 412 cab, a 410, or an 810.
Yep.
So from playing on them enough, I figured out, okay, if I'm using my 5-string PJ, I need to do this. If I'm using my 5-string jazz, I need to do this. And, you know, depending on the room too, like, but because I'm playing a lot of the same rooms every week, same time, I know, okay, our crowd's going to be this big, turn the volume to this, flatline my EQ.
So you kind of acting as like a chemist for whatever the situation is going to be.
And, you know, it took me a while to get a good sound out of them, but then I had a buddy who's a big GK user explain basically the amp to me and how it's different than everything else, and I was like, oh, okay. And once I figured that out, I just...
So how are they different than other amps?
Well, on most amps, like the EQs on the GK, I found out are kind of like a boost, like a preamp, basically. Like, so it's not really like setting the bass on, like, even if it's all off, there'll still be a presence. It'll be very low volume wise and everything. So you kind of, depending on the room, you have to play with them a little bit and just basically just turn the knobs till you can find a sound that you like. And, you know, I mean, they're great amps, and I know a lot of guys who tour with them regularly and love them. And, I mean, I like using them, and it's great not having to drag out my own stuff, you know, so. I've
been thinking about getting one of the mini SVTs for gigging. Have you seen those?
No.
They're like a small version, a mini version of the Ampeg SVTs.
Huh.
They have a direct in the back, which is pretty appealing.
Yeah.
You can just separate the head if you just wanted to use the head for practice. You can plug in your bass, plug in headphones, plug in auxiliary. And I imagine if you're gigging, pretty much what you do is that you just use your cab as a speaker if you're going direct in anyways. Yeah. So I've been thinking about getting one of those. I think that would be a pretty good investment.
Is it a tube head or?
No, it's all. I think it's all solid state.
Oh, okay.
Or digital. I don't know what it is. I know it's not tube though.
Oh, okay.
That would be cool if they made tube ones that small, but I think that would like double the price.
Well, another thing to look into if you're interested, the Portaflex heads. I've been using a Portaflex 800 for the last 3 years.
Is that like the flip top style?
No, well, it kind of looks like a flip top, but it doesn't have any tubes or anything.
Okay, so it's all digital?
Yeah, it's solid state. It's about the size of a laptop.
I think I have seen those before.
Yeah, like I carry it in a backpack. Usually. Okay. Like if I have to play downtown with it. If I'm going on the road, I bought a pedal train and just Velcroed it and my DI box to the pedal train.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so, you know, it's basically got a road case, and then when I get to the gig, everything's wired up. I just need to set it on the cab, put in the power, put in the speak on, and then we're good to go. But those, and I think they're only like about $600.
That's not bad.
Yeah, they're very affordable, and they're very, you know, for gigging purposes. Like I said, I carry it in a backpack with, you know, all my
most of the time people are going to have cabs wherever you go, right?
Yeah. I mean,
that's the one thing that I've heard from a few of the bass players that I spoke to here.
There's only a few clubs like in downtown that don't have anything, and usually when I play there, I don't even bring an amp anymore.
Direct in?
Yeah, I just bring my radial, just plug straight in, and just tell them to crank the hell out of my monitor,
mm-hmm.
you know. And luckily those places that are set up like that, they've got great monitor systems, so they can handle...
Yeah, it's kind of like you have to have one or the other.
Yeah, you know. I mean, obviously I would prefer having a bass rig behind me, because even if I have a monitor in front of me, I still have bass coming out of that wedge.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give me a little more, but I like having the rumble under my feet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why we're bass players, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you working on these days? Do you have any projects coming up? Any recording that you're doing?
Well, I'm in the middle of trying to write a new record or EP. I don't know what it's going to be. It's probably just going to be an EP just because I don't want to do a full-length thing. I just want to do a couple songs. I'm in the middle of writing some new material, but I don't know when it's going to come off the ground, to be honest, because I'm just so busy with my other gig schedule that it's, you know, and I haven't really it's been a couple of years since I pursued an original project of my own, so I don't know if I want to dive into it yet.
Sure, it's a lot of work because you're going to be the guy who's at the forefront of everything.
Exactly, I'm going to have to do the booking. I'm going to have to make sure that if the club's not paying, that whoever I hire gets paid something, so it'll come out of my pocket, and it's something I want to do, possibly, but like I said, I might just write a couple songs and hit the studio and just record and just release 150, 200 copies and just call it a day, and even if I don't make back what I spent on it, just to do it for myself.
I think that's the thing, man. Like, things are so fucking crazy in the music industry right now, and everything is just turned upside down, and no one has any idea of which way's up. It's like, I do a lot of recording and stuff just on my own, but I feel like anything that I do, I'm just gonna have to release it just because, like, I feel it in me to release it. I can't be concerned, like, is this gonna make a lot of money? Is this gonna be successful? Because I feel like those days have come to pass. And talking to some of the people here in Nashville, whether they're like, it's funny because there are a lot of different groups and they each have their own opinion. Like, the musicians obviously have an opinion on everything that's going on. The business people have an opinion that's going on, and then the fans, the people who don't play anything, they have an opinion on what's going on. Yeah, for sure. And the one thing that's common with all three of them is that no one likes the way that things are right now.
Oh yeah,
everybody feels like it's not benefiting anyone.
Well, you got to figure they're using a 50-year-old business plan, basically.
Yeah, that's very true. Absolutely,
it worked for 50 years, but now things are different. It's not 1995, people aren't going to FYE or Barnes & Nobles or Borders or anywhere that sells CDs. I mean, CD sales, record sales are down because people are streaming. And, I kind of have mixed feelings about it because I see it definitely as the high and low kind of side of things. Like when I released my first CD, I gave a lot of copies out to people, like, hey, here, check it out. So obviously streaming, if you're a young artist, it will get your music to people that it might not have gotten to before, which is great. But at the same time too, like, we are in this industry. It is an industry. It is a business.
Yeah. Music business. Business is the key word there.
Yeah, and because record sales are down, because, it kind of trickles down to everything. Tour budgets go down.
Yep.
So then, players hired out by artists, they're making less annually than they used to.
Exactly.
It's getting kind of scary, and like right now, like, no, I don't have an artist gig, but I know just doing what I do in the nightclub scene, some of my artist friends, I'm making double or triple what they're making, and they're playing with somebody, touring the country on a tour bus, and I'm sleeping in my own bed, and it's like, yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to be on a tour bus and tour the world. Like, that is a big reason why I became a musician. But it's like, well, if I can make a living doing what I'm doing, like, yes, I'm just playing covers in nightclubs, but
it's better than fucking working.
Yeah,
working for real.
Oh yeah, it's definitely better than a day job. And I mean, if I'm playing with an artist, I'm basically in a cover band anyway because I'm covering
their tunes,
or some of the artists don't even write their songs.
Yeah,
a songwriter will write them. So it's like, well, we're covering this
a co-writer.
Yeah,
change a word, get a third.
Yeah, we're covering this guy's songs. But at the end of the day, it's just I got into this because I wanted to play bass for a living, and I luckily am very fortunate to have reached that point. But I just want to keep climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah, then that's what it is, man. Like, I started thinking, I went to a couple, just events on Music Row, and I didn't go there. I didn't want to be like, yeah, I'm a bass player. Yeah, I want to do this. I just was going as, a business person, interested in management, because that's a thing that I do just for, day work, is that I do a lot of, sales and shit like that. So I tried to approach it like that, and all these people, man, they're fucking vultures.
Oh, for sure.
They're just, they're bad people. That's all there really is to it. They just take advantage of artists left and right. And Music Row, like you were saying, it's a 50-year business plan.
Yeah.
the one thing that I got out of speaking with most of those people is that music to them is secondary and money is first, which I understand. I understand that completely. But they're also taking big advantage of the artist. And it's like artists are getting fucked over now just because the money's not there. They're the last ones to get paid.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be the other way around. Everybody else the artist should be the first person to get paid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about. I usually stay away from Music Row, and I mean, I know there's definitely some shady dealings over there. And there's some companies that definitely work their tail off to make sure everybody gets what they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I've done a few band leader things here in town, and it's always made me like, nope. Unless I'm on salary, I don't want to be a music director for an artist because it just equals more stress.
So, like, someone's singing and playing guitar out front, and then you would be kind of leading the band, making sure everybody shows up on time.
Yeah.
Everybody has the charts. They've learned all the parts.
Exactly.
Going through everything with them.
Yeah. There's a few artists I've worked with here in town. They're all independent level artists who have management and stuff like that. And it's just they're kind of green to the scene, so it'll be like, hey, where should we rehearse? I'll be like, call this rehearsal space. And they're like, okay, we got it booked. And then, I have to, okay, well, we need, here's our budget. Okay, we're going to do a 3-piece band.
Yeah, no
I would
kidding.
love to have, guitar, keys, fiddle, like everything that's on the record, but that ain't going to happen. So we're going to do just bass, drums, and lead guitar, and luckily the front person plays acoustic, so that'll fill it in a little bit.
Yep.
But then I've got to be like, all right, well, who's available? Send out text. Hey, you available for the showcase? It's hour long, one rehearsal before. Here's how many songs we're doing. Here's what the pay is. I've got charts for everything. Send that out to 40 different drummers, 40 different guitar players, and see who.
And that's not counting the ones who say yes and then flake out.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of actually happened, which it was a legitimate reason. This year during Fanfare, I was working with this one artist that I've been working with for a couple of years. Her name's Kayla Calabrese. She's got great tunes, and she's a great writer. But our drummer that I hired a week before calls me up. He's like, dude, I hate to do this to you. He's like, but I got to back out of this gig. And I was like, all right, well, can you tell me why? He's like, man, so a couple of years ago, I had a fight with cancer, and it came back. And I was like, that's a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I had to go in.
Well, at least he told you a week out, not 2 hours before the gig.
Oh, yeah. And I was like, that's a very legitimate reason. He's like, you're not mad? I'm like, why would I be mad? I was like, dude, take care of your health and get that,
See, that is the rarity that
Yeah.
That's the first thing I've ever heard that's like a legitimate reason here in Nashville. Because I've gotten together with a bunch of people. When I first moved here, when we got together, we met through Marcel that you went to Berklee with, right?
Yeah.
Well, you were like one of the only people who showed up, and it's no surprise to me that you're experiencing success right now and getting work because you showed up. I was late because I went to the wrong coffee shop, but you were on time. You were probably early. You were early today.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that hits home. Like anybody who's doing things in the music business, there's just so many fucking flaky people.
For sure. But those, I mean, their talent will carry them to a point. They will, the flakes, what I have found at least, if there are flaky people, they will make it to a point, but eventually that reputation will bite them in the ass, especially in Nashville. It's a small town, especially in the music community, it's got that small town vibe. We all know each other.
Yeah.
We all know
true.
Who's playing for what artists, because when they're not playing for those artists, they're playing down on Broadway or they're picking up gigs here in town. And, we know, okay, they're, so-and-so and so-and-so. But yeah, if you have a flaky reputation and bail on people left and right, it probably will bite you in the ass because people won't want to hire you because they don't want to take that gamble. And I found that is one of my kind of keys to success is if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Like even, if I get hired for a gig and then get called to do a gig I know I'll make a lot more money on, I'll still do the gig I agreed to do.
Yeah, that's the right thing. That's morally the right thing to do.
It's all about integrity, and a little piece of me will be griping in the back of my mind for a little bit, like, oh man, I could have made $300 on this gig, and I'm doing this other one for $100. What the hell? But then I'll be like, well, I've got all this stuff coming up too. What's the problem?
Have you ever thought about like subbing work out to someone and someone that you can rely on? Be like, hey, I have this gig that I was supposed to take tonight. Can you do it? That way I can do this other, like a farm system.
Usually if I do sub out work, like if I know I'm going to be out of town or if I get sick or anything like that. But for me, it's all about integrity. So if I agree weeks in advance to do a gig with somebody and then 2 days before get called for a better, or not better, but a more financially lucrative gig,
sure,
I will not sub out the one I agreed to do.
Sure.
It's just,
it wouldn't sit right with you?
Yeah, it just wouldn't morally sit right with me. So I'll call my buddies and be like, hey, who's available? Here's this great gig. You're probably gonna make a ton of money.
Well, that's the other smart thing is like I think with something like that, it is a business. So with something like that, if you're subbing out work and you give someone a really good gig, they're gonna remember that in the back of their head and like, hey, he got me a paycheck.
That has happened a lot, and a lot of guys, a lot of bass players that I know that play like the downtown scene and the club scene here in town. When I was kind of new and green to everything, they were throwing me kind of the shitty gigs they didn't want.
Sure,
It wasn't necessarily the best bands. The pay wasn't that great.
Yeah.
But
you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. When you're, 23, 24, new to Nashville and eager to play.
That's exactly where I am right now.
I'm just like, yeah, whatever, sure, okay, I'll do it. And then there'll be points where I'll be like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
But then, it'll get back to them that you did well. And then so they'll be like, hey, so, like a very good buddy of mine here in town called me up, and this was years ago, and he's like, hey man, so here's the deal. He's like, I was supposed to do this wedding gig in Georgetown, just outside of D.C. He's like, expenses covered, travel expenses are covered, they'll feed you at the wedding, and travel's covered. You just need to like maybe buy food on the road. I was like, okay. I was like, well, what's the pay? He's like, $400. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Just up there, play, and back, no problem. And it was right before Christmas. I was like, yeah, I could use the money, and but he had thrown me a lot of work before that was just like, okay, I'm gonna make $50 tonight.
Yeah.
But it all kind of snowballed, and he entrusted me with doing this
a decent gig, a good one, something that you want.
Yeah. And it all worked out, and and it turned, it was one of those situations. Sometimes you'll do these one-offs you'll get called again for, and I did that, and I've never heard from those guys again. Like, they all liked my playing and stuff, but they have a regular guy.
Yeah, sure.
And they're kind of in a different circuit than I am, and it just, so they pull from their pool of players.
Yeah,
So, but we all got along, we all had fun, and that's the key, too, is just, the key to success is, obviously be on time or early, which I'm always early for everything if I can.
Respect. Yes, I agree.
I leave, like last night I didn't play the band before us. They didn't stop till 10:15, which was when they're supposed to stop. Mm-hmm. I was at the club by 9:30. I was 45 minutes early just because I knew, okay, I'm here. My year's at the club. I'm good to go.
You never know what opportunity is going to pop up if you show up early too in a situation like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I don't usually think of it that way. I just think like I don't have to stress like, oh shit, I'm running late.
Yeah.
I got to park. And
that's the worst feeling.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm here. I'm relaxed. I can have a beer, unwind, and then play. So I think being early when you say you're going to do something, which is kind of what I'm talking about now. When you say you're going to do something, just do it. Like, you agreed to do this. Take that as a verbal contract. treat it like.
Especially with a lot of the older musicians here, that like in other areas of the country, or even in business that I've encountered, like some of that stuff doesn't matter, but these guys, a lot of them, their word is gold.
Oh yeah,
and I really respect and admire that.
Oh yeah, and especially with the older cats, because a lot of them, you'll see these sometimes older bass player or steel player or something playing in a club, and you're like, man, what, like, this guy's a killer player, but then you find out his resume, and you find out, like, yeah, he spent 15 years on the road with so-and-so.
You never know who's played with who here.
Exactly.
It's just like, they can be an incredible player and have played with nobody, and I think that usually means that they're a flake, or they could just be fucking phenomenal and have played with everybody.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things where a lot of those guys, too, like, when I was younger, I was, the first band I ever saw in Nashville was the Don Kelly Band at Roberts. And at the time, he had David Rourke playing bass for him, and he would introduce Dave, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, this was Johnny Cash's last touring bass player before he retired from touring, David Rourke," and he would take an upright solo and do that all upright rockabilly slap stuff. And I'd be sitting there watching, and I'd be like, man, like, that must really suck to have, like, gone from touring the world with Johnny Cash and these other artists to playing a club on Broadway, like this, that, and the other, which, of course, I didn't realize how much money they were making doing that. And then I got to talking to him, he's like, dude, I do this just to, like, he's like, yeah, the money's great. He's like, but this isn't my job.
They do it because they love it and they want to play.
I was like, well, what's your job? He's like, I do sessions. And then, I went back and kind of checked him out and found out, like he does a lot of demo session work. He does some big sessions too, and that's how he makes his living. Like, he's like, I got a studio set up at home so I can do mobile sessions if someone needs to just bounce me tracks. I was like, oh, well, no shit. He's like, yeah. He's like, this is great. He's like, this gig is what he's like, doing sessions pays for my house and car and if I want to go on vacation. He's like, this gig is I use as my, I want to buy another bass.
Yeah, exactly.
And he kind of, he's like, this is just my rainy day fun gig. And he did it for years, and then he was getting to the point, I mean, he's an older cat, and he was just like, man, he's like, he ended up stepping down from Don Kelly, and I messaged him and asked him about it. He's like, yeah, he's like, I was just between doing the sessions during the day, like at various studios or at my house, and then having to go downtown and play every Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 6 to 10. He's like, I was just playing way too much. I just couldn't, it was burning me out. He's like, I just couldn't do it. He's like, maybe if I was, 20 years younger, he's like, I would have been down because it was, 15 hours. He's like, I was playing bass for 15 hours a day and I just couldn't.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, that's understandable. So now Don has Slick Joe Fick, which I don't know if you've ever seen him play.
No.
If you ever thought about playing upright, he'll make you change your mind real quick.
Is he amazing?
He's badass. Which is funny because he's a tiny little guy, so his 3/4 size upright looks like a full size next to him. It's really funny, but he's a younger dude, so like I think he was from what I heard. I don't know if this is true, but I heard he was classically trained and then like got into rockabilly in college, and like he can do that like rockabilly slap stuff on upright.
Yeah.
But like the rhythmic patterns he does are not like, usually it's just like triplets, like
yeah, sure.
He'll throw like 16th note triplets or just like really crazy rhythmic stuff in that you would never hear anyone else do. And I mean, and he does like, he'll angle his upright so he can stand on it while playing.
Yep.
And does all the showboat stuff, which is great. Like he's a really entertaining cat, but he's also just a...
Do you play upright?
A little bit, but I sold my upright to get another bass.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that. It's the 5-string you have now, right?
Yeah, one of my 5 strings. Yeah, I ended up trading in towards one of my basses just because it was sitting in the corner, and I was like, you know what? I mean, eventually I want to get another one, but I'll probably just get like either a plywood bass or just a hybrid one where it's like got the carved top and back, and then the plywood sides. But for now, I'm just like, I just got too much stuff going on electric, and what really what really made me inspired me to be okay with letting my upright go was I was reading an article with Ron Carter, who's one of the greatest living bass players. And he said, they asked him, they're like, why don't you double anymore? He's like, man, I did a lot of doubling in the 60s and then some in the 70s. And he's like, and then after a while I just gave it up. He's like, and then Jocko hit the scene and he's like, then I really was like, nope. He's like, I just realized they're just two different animals, and he's like, upright's my thing. He's like, there's other cats that'll be the electric guys, let them do it.
So does he play at all anymore?
He plays upright. I mean,
he just play. Okay, he still does.
Yeah, he teaches at Juilliard, but then he tours. Even at his age, he's like, I think in his 80s now. Yeah, and he's got a ridiculous tour schedule.
Yeah, because he's like a living legend.
Yeah, which I like it too. That's kind of the aspirations I live to, that I want, is like, okay, if I take care of myself, and treat my body right, don't drink too much, don't do drugs, work out, eat right, I want to play into my 80s and still tour and teach and do what he does, because he's, it keeps you young, I feel like.
Yeah, it does.
Like maybe one day I want to retire, but...
Well, the great thing about music, too, is that there are always going to be musicians who are coming up, and they're, like, one day we're going to be in our 50s, and there are going to be guys who are our age right now.
Exactly.
Who we're going to be around, and they're going to be telling us and like showing us new stuff that we haven't heard of, and we're going to be teaching them.
Yeah, we'll be showing them, okay, well, here's some tricks that I learned along the way.
Yeah.
And take it as you will.
I've personally had a lot of mentors in music that have always kind of guided me along. Was it similar for you too?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it all started, with my private instructor when I was a kid, and then I had my sophomore year of high school. The band director we had, he literally taught at my school for 1 year. Like, because the guy, when I started high school, my freshman year, that guy, he decided to move to a different school because the class that was graduating that year was the class that started with him.
Sure, so yeah, a lot of music teachers do that.
Yeah, so he's like, he didn't want to continue with a new class. He just, because these kids that he had grown with, because it was his first teaching job right out of college, like, so he had grown with them just as much as they had grown with him, so he decided to just bail. I mean, which I understand. So my sophomore year, we had this one teacher, and he was a badass fucking jazz tenor player, and he's kind of the guy that told me about Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke and kind of all these...
He opened your eyes. Yeah.
And I was like, and told me to like check this out, check that out, and really kind of pushed my boundaries sonically and got me into a lot of cool stuff. So he was kind of like outside of my private instructor, was like my first kind of music mentor to kind of get me to check stuff out. And then when I hit college, I had a lot of that, obviously, being in a music school and
Berklee.
Yeah. My first private instructor up there, Lenny Stallworth, he definitely became another one of those kind of music gurus for me, and got me into a lot of stuff. Like, he's the guy who got me into James Jamerson and turned me into a Jamerson. And just a Motown.
Well, if you take a look at that that bass, I have actually. We're looking at my 62 reissue Fender P bass that I use as my gigging bass. And I actually have the mute in there is like a sock that I cut up, and it just sounds so good. Like, it doesn't. Fenders are just so fucking reliable.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I know for me, like, I always had teachers that. Did you have any ones that were really crazy that would, like, whiplash style? Maybe not that extreme, but yeah.
One of my teachers at Berklee, his name was Anthony Vitti. Great bass player, great teacher too. I studied with him my last 2 years, and he really got my technique on point and my time and a lot of other stuff that, he saw the kind of the holes, and he helped me fill them in, but it was definitely he didn't hold back punching, you know, which was good.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely was.
I think
good.
it's valuable.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes it can be a little rough. You know, I think there was a few moments in my time of studying with him where he realized, okay, we need to pump the brakes a little bit because I'm about to make a big man cry.
Yeah.
You know, but like his philosophy was, okay, I'm assigning you this stuff, learn it, you know, because he would have these like Chuck Rainey Steely Dan transcriptions that he would make me read, and he had all that, like he's got a lot of great workbooks for reading, and his thoughts on it were always, okay, you know, learn this like it's a gig, and when we come in, like he would have a drum loop that I'd play it to, or like if it was, you know, the Steely Dan thing, I would play it to the recording, but have the volume set real low so he could really hear me over the recording, and like with his stuff from it, you know, all this stuff, he would be always like, look, he's like, imagine every lesson is an audition for a gig. I'm the guy who has the gig. You know,
that's such a great thing. Like growing up for me, I had this one crazy teacher that actually Marcel played with. He wasn't really Marcel's teacher. I don't know how they met, but it's this guy Matt Fogg. Okay. And Matt, he had this place called Midcoast School of Music. So Marcel played in his wedding band. So Matt opened a music school, and he did like piano. They did ensembles and everything like that. And I would go in sometimes to like rehearsal, and I wouldn't be ready, or I would sound like shit. I was like 16, 17, something like that. You're just a stupid kid doing this. And Matt would just stop the entire band because if the bass isn't there, everything falls the fuck apart. Yeah. And he would just stop and be like, "Why aren't you ready?" And like ask me. Everybody would just be looking at me. And I remember there was this one time, the most valuable gig, the biggest lesson I ever learned with music. We had this gig where we were playing Midnight Train to Georgia, which I don't know. I was probably just about to graduate high school. We were playing at this basically a showcase for the past, I don't know, 12 weeks or whatever it is, of us playing all these songs. And Midnight Train to Georgia, the whole time I had been just shitting myself on and not nailing it, not nailing the changes. And we went into it, we started off, and I fucked up the changes within like the first 8 bars. He stops, he leans over to me, he puts his hand over the microphone so no one can hear him. He's like, "You're dropping bass notes left and right, I'm going to need you to get your shit together." Then he counted it off right away, and fucking nailed the song. Yeah. And it was like one of the most rewarding experiences I had. But I think it's so important to have a music teacher who has that philosophy of, I have the gig, this is your audition.
Yeah, and it really, you know, studying with him forced me to you know, better myself and you know, because I remember while at Berklee, you know, I was taking private lessons with him. I was doing my recital prep thing and my private lesson, which basically was an hour-long private lesson. It was supposed to be 2 30 minutes, but I just stacked them so I could get an hour lesson out of it. And there was a lot of times where it just was that kind of old school mentality of like, you have to come prepared, you have to be better than the guy next to you. Yeah. You know, because
the working musician mentality.
Yeah. Do you want to eat ramen this week or do you want to eat steak? You know? And that's kind of a philosophy I've have carried with me over the years, and that's why I always make it a point to always be as prepared as possible. And there will be situations where you get called 2 days before a gig and you get sent a set list of 60 obscure songs and you're like, well, shit. Yeah. You know, and that's when you just get out the pen and paper and you chart everything out, and you know, and then just on the ride there, you know, usually situations like that, it's an out-of-town gig, so you've got like an 8-hour ride to listen to everything. You know, you won't play the exact bass lines, but just recreate, you know, learn any signature licks if there are, like if it's, you know, something where a bass doubles, you know, a guitar lick, obviously, but yeah, you just kind of, it's this, like, Midnight Train to Georgia. I have yet to sit down and transcribe the Bob Babbitt bass line. Mm-hmm. I really want to. and every time I set out to, usually something else comes up. I know the changes, so I'm like, okay, well, I know I've played a lot of Bob Babbitt bass lines. I played a lot of just, the R&B of that era.
You know his vocabulary.
So so stylistically, I can make it sound like it fits. But I definitely want to dive in and, pick some stuff apart more. But yeah, it's, there will be times where you will not feel as prepared as you should be, obviously. But you just do your best in those situations.
Yeah, that's I think a real struggle in itself. For me, if I don't feel as prepared as I should be, it doesn't always necessarily mean I was given the tools or resources to feel that way, which is kind of what you're talking about.
Exactly. And like I said, I always try to be as prepared as I can. I always try and show up early. I'm at the point now where when I go to gigs, I always take 2 basses with me, just because on long gigs, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I had, a couple of years ago, I had a situation where I was doing like a triple or something, where I was doing like 3 gigs in one day, all back to back. And I had this, my main bass at the time was in the shop, and I was using this Squier 5-string P bass. That's like the Squier Classic series, I think. Like, it looked like a vintage bass. Do my first 2 gigs. I get to my 3rd gig. I pull the bass out. The washer and the bolt that hold the input jack in place were gone. So the input jack was just like floating around inside the bass.
Oh,
so I had to unscrew the pick guard, get the input jack out. I went to the sound guy. I'm like, look, man, do you have any duct tape or gaff tape? He's like, yeah. What do you need? I'm like, I need to MacGyver my bass so it works. So I put the input jack in, and I turned the volume on and hit the string to make sure it had connection and sound, because it wouldn't stay in.
Yeah.
So I put it in and I held it. I'm like, hold this for me. And I start wrapping it with tape. And I had to duct tape my cable into the input jack.
Jeez.
And play for 3 days like that.
Did it work?
It worked.
What, did it go in and out?
No,
Wow.
I had it in there real tight, and I just taped it really, really tight, and it was a scary situation, because it's like, oh shit, I gotta play in 15 minutes and my bass is fucked.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything else with me. So then I was like, all right, we need to always have a backup, and now I've got a double gig bag, and I always have both my main basses with me that I use primarily on gigs, and I'm like, all right, I feel safer now.
Yeah, I bet. So, in regards, I guess, kind of what we were talking about earlier, the music industry and everything like that, what do you feel as far as the quality of work that's been being put out? Is there anything that you really are listening to, anyone newer that you think, wow, these guys are great?
Honestly, no. No. It's not that I don't think there's good music out there. There is. I love Bruno Mars, actually.
He's really good.
Yeah, he's probably one of the newer artists that I enjoy. The issue is when if I'm listening to the radio in my car, a lot of times I'm listening to the classic rock station.
Sure.
Or I'm listening to like 96.3, which they don't really, they play a lot of 80s pop. I'm sure you've listened to Jack FM, and they play a lot of mix of stuff, but I feel like I rarely hear new songs on there. Like, it's all like a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, which is great. It's all stuff I love. But yeah, I need to get more in tune, I think, with what's going on.
Have you listened to Sturgill at all? Sturgill Simpson?
Yeah.
Have you listened to his new record?
I haven't heard his new record
Oh,
yet.
dude,
I've heard
it's fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's good.
Obviously, I love Chris Stapleton. I love the Traveler album. That's a great record. And yeah, I know a lot of the new pop country, because one of the guys I play with, that's what he loves to do. Or he's of the mindset, he's like, I would love to just do 90s country. He's like, but for the time slots we're playing, this is what they want to hear.
Because that's who's going to be there.
Yeah,
the audience.
and yeah, exactly. The younger, the 21 to 30, kind of audience. So I kind of learn about, as far as pop country goes, what's going on, I learn about through him. Because he'll be like, hey, learn this new song by Florida Georgia Line. I'll be like, okay, and I'll go and check it out. I'm like, all right, cool, we got it.
So do you like any of that stuff, or are you just kind of playing it?
I mean, some of it I like, some of it I don't. A lot of it's fun to play.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I would agree with that.
It's fun music to play, and obviously, if any of those artists called me to tour for them, I'd be
absolutely
on in a heartbeat.
100%. Yeah.
But actually, like, as far as like just listening to music for enjoyment, which I don't do as much anymore as I should, just because when you're constantly playing, constantly having to learn tunes, like, a lot of times the last thing you want to do is
listen to music. Yeah.
You know, and it's because, too, from having to learn so much stuff, my analytical brain is kicked on, so I'll be listening to something, and I'll listen to it once, and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, but then I'll start picking it apart and analyzing it, like, oh, okay, so you did 1 major to a 4 to a 2 minor, okay, you know, just kind of picking apart the chord changes and then the bass line, and I'll be like, oh god, turn it off, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to turn that off, especially if you're listening to tunes and just deconstructing like the kind of chords that they're doing. Mm-hmm. When you sit down to actually just listen to something, or if you're doing something else, typing on your computer, I have to turn shit off because I'm just like, I can't do that right now because I'm just thinking about the songwriting, or I'm thinking about the production, or I'm thinking about the bass player.
Mm-hmm. I have that same problem, and which is a good problem to have, especially if you're a professional musician, because that is what makes you learn material quicker. Yeah. You know, but there's times where, you know, there's some artists that I refuse to ever learn their tunes. Like, I picked up that, I forget the name of the album, it was that The Wallflowers, but it was like that real popular record of theirs. Yeah. One Headlight. Yeah, yeah. Had all their like really big songs on it. I picked that up from this used bookstore, and I put it in my CD player in my car. I'm listening. I'm like, God, these were such great fucking tunes. Like, it had been almost 20 years since I heard that record, and I started to kind of pick it apart. And I was like, no,
some things are sacred.
Oh yeah, like, some things are better left alone. Like, I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan.
I fucking love Bruce Springsteen.
I don't know a single Bruce tune.
Really?
I don't know how to play a single Bruce song. You know, and now, I mean, I could probably go back and learn, but it's one of those things, too, where I'm just like, I love this music so much that I want it to still be music and enjoyable and fresh and just, you know, entertainment, basically. You know, I want it to be entertaining.
What's your favorite Springsteen record?
Obviously Born to Run.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that, I love the two others before that, like, The Good, the Bad, was
the E Street,
the Good, the Bad, E Street Shuffle, and Greetings from Asbury Park. They were great records, and it's really, I mean, it's great that people know about them now. But I mean, obviously, like when those for the first two records came out, they got swept under the rug. Yeah, nobody cared. Yeah, it wasn't until Born to Run came out that people were like, went back and were like, oh shit, you know, and so.
I really love Darkness on the Edge of Town. I think that's my favorite Springsteen one because it's just such stark contrast to Born to Run. Yeah. Like, I love Born to Run. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. But Darkness on the Edge of Town, it's like realizing, like, Born to Run was the idealism of, like, getting out of your hometown and going to do something. And Darkness on the Edge of Town was you left, you came back, and now everything's kind of the same as if, like, except that idealism's just not there anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's the great thing about Bruce is he you know, his music is very blue collar, obviously, but it's honest, and that's what I feel. I guess coming back to what's on the radio today, that's what I feel is lacking.
Honesty. I would agree with that for sure.
You know, that's why I think Sturgill Simpson's blowing up and Chris Stapleton.
Absolutely. I 150% agree with that.
You know, like, I would even say Bruno Mars. Like, you know, his stuff's like kind of poppy and fun. But
there's a level of authenticness that's there with him, though.
Yeah, like, you can tell even with his new stuff, like, Bruno has been Bruno through everything. Yeah. You know,
and his MO hasn't changed as an artist.
Exactly, and it just definitely, not enough artists, too many artists are under control of the record company, you know, and not enough of them are standing up to the record company and be like, no, this is what I want to do. Yeah. You know, like, I'm, like, Taylor Swift, for example, like, I respect her very deeply on a business sense. I think, obviously too, she's on top of the world right now in the music industry, so she can do whatever she wants, and she is, but in a very good way. Like, I love that, she took her stuff down off Spotify. I was like, no, like, not to be a jerk, but if you're going to want my music, you're going to have to go out and buy it. And everyone's like, oh, that's not going to work. And then her album became, like, the top-selling record in pop at the time. So it's
1989, right? That's a good album. There's some really good pop tunes on there.
Well, exactly. And I think, too, and, like, all her, musically speaking, like, her older country stuff, it was always fun stuff to play. Like, I just, I couldn't relate to it because I wasn't a 16-year-old girl. So lyrically I was like, I'm sure this appeals to somebody. Yeah. But again, there's that level of honesty that, what she presented at the time was her. Yeah. Did I necessarily like it all? No. But again, I wasn't a 16-year-old girl at one point.
I think I might have seen her one morning at Kroger.
Oh, it's very possible.
I used to live over in East Nashville, in Inglewood, so it was like about as far northeast Nashville as you could get before you get to Madison. Yeah. And I was there, it was super early in the morning, and I see this chick walk by me, and I'm like, was that Taylor Swift? Yeah. And I turn around, and she was like walking past me, and she smiled, and I'm still not 100% sure if it was her or not, because it was early, she wasn't done up. But I went across the street because I used to go in there every morning because I had to catch a bus downtown when I worked downtown. Yeah. And I was out at the bus stop, and then I see this huge SUV just roll out of there. It looked like it was like an Escalade with it was something similar to that, just something that's completely pent out. So I'm pretty sure it was her.
I mean, there's a high chance. I know she's living a lot in New York now because she's doing the more pop thing. Obviously, but she's still got a house down here, and I think she owns like a condo in the Gulch and like stuff like that. And I mean, people used to see her, bouncing around all the time. And I mean, you can pretty much see any of those artists all the time.
Nashville's still small enough to where that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I was when I had my old Impala, I was driving around and I was having to take it into the shop because the the Freon needed to be recharged in the air conditioner, which is not good in the middle of July in Tennessee. Yeah. So I'm in my Impala, sweating my butt off, and this car pulls up next to me. It's a convertible, and I look over, and there's a guy and his beautiful wife, and I'm sitting there, and I look over again. I'm like, that guy looks really familiar. He looks really. So does she, actually. And I'm like, where the fuck do I know these people from? I mean, he's driving like a BMW or a Lexus, something, a real fancy car, and I had a Brad Paisley CD in my car playing at the time, and the guy yells, he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Do you like that guy?" And I turned down, I'm like, "What?" He's like, "That music, you like it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I dig this album. I think it's real good." I think it was like the guitar album he did where it was...
Dude, he can fucking shred, man. He's a good... He might be the best guitarist in Nashville.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he's definitely up there. He can be thrown into a lot of situations.
And he plays that B-bender telly?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a G-bender.
A G-bender? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know, obviously, enough about guitars to know why he chose that over a B-bender.
That's some guitar geek shit that we'll never understand.
Yeah. That's for them to discuss on their podcast. But, he yells at me, he's like, "Yeah, you like that?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then I look at him, and it, like, hits me. I'm like, that's Brad Paisley. That's funny. And he saw, like, the recognition on my face, and he's got a shit-eating grin. He's like, "Thanks, man, have a good day." And he just peels off, and the light turns green, and I'm like, that's why I recognized him and his wife, because it's Brad Paisley and his wife, whose name I can never remember, but I know her from, what was that movie that she was in? She's
an actress?
Yeah. She's in that movie with Steve Martin. I can't remember, but yeah, it was just one of those situations where I was like, well, no shit. And I forget, it wasn't, in the usual spot that I figured I would run into a country artist. I wasn't in Green Hills. I wasn't in Belmead. You know, I think I was on Nolensville Pike. And I was like, the fuck is Brad Paisley doing on Nolensville Pike? You know?
That's what's great about Nashville is like you kind of have to. It's like it's possible to see somebody anywhere.
Oh yeah,
because there's different things at different parts of town that we all have to centrally get to.
Exactly, and the thing too that someone told me when I first moved here was never, like basically you never know that guy in the dirty overalls behind you in line at the McDonald's. He could be a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the Northeast where you know, okay, that person has a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that person's dirty.
Yeah, that person's drinking brandy out of a coffee mug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where down here, you could see a guy in an Armani suit who could be filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And you could see a guy in a dirty old pair of cowboy boots, an old ripped up pair of blue jeans, driving a beat up pickup truck.
Who's a millionaire.
Who could, you know, pay off my entire student debt in one check if he wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, and it would be nothing to him. So I love that aspect of Nashville.
Yeah.
And
everybody's coexisting together.
Yeah, you know, so.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. I appreciate you coming on today. Can you just kind of plug yourself a little bit where people can get at you and how to reach you for any bass playing, any music stuff, anything like that?
Well, I don't have a website yet. I'm in the process of building it, but I mean, just hit me up on Facebook. You just Google or Facebook search my name, Joe Birmingham. You'll probably find me. Feel free to private message me there. That's probably the best way to get hold of me. It's just through Facebook. I need to get better at my social media. I need to get Twitter and Instagram and all the cool stuff.
All the things the kids have today.
Yeah, all the stuff the cool kids are doing. I'm not doing. But yeah, hit me up on Facebook. Just Google search Joe Birmingham, BIRMINGHAM, just like the city, and you'll probably find me. You know, all my profile pictures have me playing bass, so you'll know it's me. Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
And where can we see you play at?
I'm pretty much in downtown Nashville multiple nights a week. Every Tuesday I'm at Legends Corner. Thursdays I'm usually at Crazy Town. Saturdays I'm at the Stage Upstairs Bar. And then Sundays I'm at Crazy Town and Crossroads. Those are my usual gigs. And then everything else is kind of filling in. But pretty much if you bounce around Lower Broadway, you'll be bound to find me somewhere.
Awesome, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.